Welcome back to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning has been on issues that have made headlines lately, and the shooting death of 31-year-old Dontre Hamilton in Milwaukee's Red Arrow Park is one of many stories involving the deaths of unarmed black men by police across the country. My next guest is a columnist for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel editorial board. He is a graduate of Marshall High School. He has a BA degree in communications from Marquette University and an MBA from Cardinal Stritch. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. James Causey. How are you?
I'm good.
It is a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And I wanted you here because on so many different occasions I have read your column, and I'm really intrigued by your thoughts on so many of the things that happen in our community. So, for instance, this year will mark the 50th anniversary of the march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. And you wrote that protest marches are sweeping across Milwaukee and the country, and that these protests are not the same as the civil rights marches of 50 years ago. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's sort of interesting because I had an opportunity to talk with someone, Reverend Joseph Ellwanger, a retired minister here who marched with King during the Selma March, and he compared the two. The marches from then, 50 years ago, to the marches of today. And basically what he said is that the marches of then, they had star power. You had King, you had Ralph Abernathy, you had all these great leaders who would come together and they would discuss their plans for months before they would actually do something. And today's marches, they lack that star power, but they still have the enthusiasm that are sweeping across the country. However, with that lack of star power and that lack of planning, he just wonders if they have the same impact. I think they still do. I think marches are important, but I also think that we have a new breed of leader today. We don't necessarily have to have the King or the Abernathy or people like that to lead marches. I think this new breed of leader is different. He's important, he or she is important, and they know how to rally a group of people who have been overlooked for so long. These are people who want to talk about jobs, they want to talk about their future, they want to talk about a lot of the same issues that the people talked about and marched about 50 years ago. So it's different, but in a way it's sort of the same.
Yeah, so is it interesting to you that at this time we've got Oprah Winfrey and Brad Pitt executive producing the movie Selma, which at the time of this airing will be in theaters. It's ironic that we get to see those protests being planned in the form of a movie 50 years ago and compare that to what we're seeing take place today. And I also find it interesting that Oprah had written that she thinks that some of the protests in Ferguson lacked leadership, and she was really attacked on social media for making that comment. But it's interesting with what you just had put together on how people think differently on how protests should go about.
It's funny that she was attacked for that, but what she said was true. A lot of people don't understand how much planning went into marches back then.
Yeah.
When King would have ministers from far come to sit in this room, and they would discuss. He would sit back and he would listen to all the different discussions about what should take place. He didn't use this as his bully pulpit to say this is the way we're going to do it. He would take all the ideas, put them together, think about them, and figure out what was the best plan of action. And there were some disagreements, there were some heated debates, but ultimately his thought was go about this in a nonviolent way, because that way you get the biggest impact, and you don't turn people off by doing violent acts, because the worst thing that you could do with the national media all on you is to create this violence and this chaos. Don't get me wrong, I think protests and marches and things of that nature should cause you to think. They should make you feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, if you're causing too much chaos, I think it could backfire on you. And that's one of the things Reverend Ellwanger brought up. He said that yes, they should be disruptive. Yes, they should cause you to think. But there's a fine line in between chaos and causing people to turn against you.
I totally agree with that. And Reverend Jesse Jackson was just in Milwaukee to meet with the Hamilton family, and he asked how we're able to rise above the issue of race when it comes to cheering on the Green Bay Packers. But then when it comes to our everyday lives, a lot of people have a hard time coming together and understanding that ultimately all lives matter.
Right. And that's what this Black Lives Matter campaign is all about. And I had an opportunity to talk to King right after the march. And I think the point that he's trying to make, and I tried to sum this up in my column, is that the death of Dontre Hamilton is just as important as the death of an officer. Mm-hmm. The death of a 10-year-old on a playground in Milwaukee who's doing what normal kids do on a playground, play, when she happens to be caught in a crossfire and she dies because of the act of two men having a dispute. That death is just as important as the death of a kid in Mequon. Yeah. And we need to start thinking of lives in that way. I don't think we do that right now, because I think there's an idea that if you're poor, if you're disadvantaged, if you live a certain way, then you deserve what happens to you. And we have to change that concept. You'll be surprised how many people went after Michael Brown after the Ferguson situation, who said that he deserved it because he robbed his store right before that happened. So let me get this straight. Robbing a store means that you get the death penalty? I mean, I think we need to change our idea and thinking about these situations.
I couldn't agree with you more, because I too have been on social media and read some of the comments that people have, and I'm a firm believer that a lot of people hide behind those little boxes with the unidentified face to say what they really feel. And one of them, I don't know what it is about Jesse Jackson and Reverend Al Sharpton that sparks so many negative comments, but on JS Online, there's one comment that said, "I'm truly sorry that blacks in this country have chosen con artists like Jackson and Sharpton as their paid-for spokesmen. You'll never get anywhere being led by these clowns. They need to keep you uneducated, unemployed, and beholden to the white man to keep their income flowing in." That's I found that very hard to digest. And then there was another that says, "I got an idea maybe Jackson marched downtown to the liberal Democrat mayor that has done nothing, or that worthless liberal-run MPS. These are the things destroying the black community. It's not the whites killing the blacks killing each other. It's time for the blacks to look in the mirror at themselves and quit blaming everyone else." I mean, strong statements, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, but this is where we get that serious divide that doesn't allow us to come together and get on the same page and make things better for everyone.
Well, comments are one thing, and I take the comments with a grain of salt, although I think a lot of people do say what they really feel in the comments because they can hide behind it. We have a race problem and a class problem in this country. That's been clear as day since even before all of this stuff took place. Yeah. I think the sad part about it is that they listen, they see King or Sharpton or whoever, and they look at them and say, that's the reason for the problems. MPS is the reason for the problem. The black community is the reason for the problems. But, that does nothing to fix the problems that we have. I don't want to be sitting here 10 years from now having the same discussion. Right. But I think but having those kind of comments, that leaves us in a place where we will be here 10 years from now having the same discussion. I want to move forward. I think we're at the level now where we should be pushing the bar forward. And I think this new breed of leader that we have coming up can change that.
And we can only pray that that is the case. And quickly, we have just about a minute. You were born and raised here in Milwaukee, right. So I'm wondering how difficult it is for you to see scenarios like 10-year-old Sierra Guyton, 5-year-old Layla Peterson, and 13-month-old Bill Tao be gunned down, making us all feel like we aren't safe in our own homes. Mm-hmm. Is this our new reality as we wrap up?
I'll just put it to you this way. All death is bad, but I think you could judge a city's health by how we protect our kids. Mm. If our kids are being gunned down, then that's a black stamp on our city, on our state, on our entire state. And that's something that everyone needs to be a part of to fix. Again, the death of any of these children is just as bad to me as the death of anyone else anywhere else.
Absolutely. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time. It's a pleasure talking with you. James Causey is the columnist for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel editorial board, and you can read many of his past articles by logging on to jsonline.com. And that is going to do it for today's show. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. As always, I thank you for watching, and I hope you join us again next week as we take another look at Our Issues Milwaukee.